coming up.
Combs abused, threatened, and coerced victims to fulfill his sexual desires.
Diddy's downfall.
I believe the indictment is the tip of the iceberg.
From a life of luxury to a New York jail cell.
People in Diddy's inner circle could be turning against him.
So who's next to be named?
They are cutting deals with them to testify.
In music's Me Too moment.
I do think that he will be found guilty.
That's next on 60 Minutes. Hello and welcome to Extra Minutes, the 60 Minutes podcast. I'm Adam Hegarty and I'm joined by producer Sammi Taylor.
Hey,
Sammi,
Adam.
good to see you,
You
as
too.
always. Now, we've looked into the legal saga surrounding music mogul, rapping mogul Sean Diddy Combs, currently in a jail cell, and we've gone back to former FBI agent Tracy Walder to get her take on it all. She's always on the money, it seems, isn't she?
She is. A lot of the things that Tracy predicted when we spoke to her a couple of months back have now come true.
Yeah, so what's that? The time taken, wasn't it? That was the big one between the big raids on his homes and then actually an indictment?
Absolutely. Look, when we first spoke to Tracy back in June of this year, we were talking to her about these raids that were done on Sean Combs' properties in Miami and in Los Angeles. I think at the time, the raids were seen to be quite destructive, that they were almost over the top in a way, very messy, every couch cushion turned over, property damage done as they federal agents combed through every corner of those properties. And those raids were done at the same time as well. And Tracy told us at the time that was probably to prevent anyone trying to destroy evidence.
Yeah, we cottoned on pretty quick, didn't we, in that interview a few months ago, that she was talking about something that might have been taped or a lot of things that might have been taped and on video in his possession.
Absolutely. Tracy told us that her suspicion was that federal agents were specifically looking for video evidence, for digital evidence, whether that was flash drives, hard drives, home security systems, those kinds of things. And we now know, after Combs's arrest and the indictment, that she was correct, that what they've discovered is video evidence.
And she's pretty strong on that point, isn't she? What'd she say? About 80 to 90% of what's being said could be on video, and it's a pretty scary thought considering what we're reading.
100%. Look, the indictment is 14 pages long. Tracy says that's not common, that's actually quite short, which I thought was interesting.
But it's the detail, isn't it?
The detail is incredibly graphic in that indictment, and with what it describes, specifically in relation to the video evidence that the agents have seized.
Yeah, well, you've read through that very closely, Sammi, as I have, but take us through that indictment, Sammi. I mean, we both read through that and everything sort of captures your attention pretty much on every line, but what are those allegations against
No, absolutely. Look, he's been charged on 3 counts. He's been charged on racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. And they're pretty big claims, pretty big accusations. The detail that's in the indictment is quite frankly quite horrific. It describes, these sex parties that Sean Combs would allegedly host. He called them freak-offs. They're really graphic, kind of awful things to discuss, but essentially what the indictment says is that women and male sex workers were brought in to kind of undertake a sexual performance.
And that's the trafficking side of things.
Absolutely, and that a lot of these encounters were filmed. It's really tough stuff to kind of talk about and tough to read. But when you also look at what else was seized from the properties at that time, not just video evidence, but firearms, narcotics, 1,000 bottles of baby oil.
Yeah,
it's bizarre.
It is. And then you look at the racketeering side of things, don't you? Racketeering is a funny one because when you hear racketeering and RICO, you think of crime gangs, bikie groups. But when we spoke to Tracy, she was pretty clear about it, wasn't she, that this can now apply to individuals. And the accusation in Diddy's case is that he's formed this protective group around him who would do his bidding. That's the accusation here, and that's the racketeering side of things.
Yeah, when we were talking to Tracy, she suspects that there are other people that might be caught up in this, that, there might be more charges laid, and that a lot of people in Diddy's inner circle may actually choose to turn against him and share their own stories about what they may have witnessed.
That was the big one for me. Talking to Tracy, she made note again of the video evidence, which is, as you say, pretty shocking to think about, but was that a striking contrast to you when we're talking about people potentially turning on Combs? Because for so long, over months and years now, we've heard that he has this really close-knit group around him who, allegedly, would protect him at all costs.
Yeah, you even look at, we spoke to Susie Siegel a couple of months ago. She was Combs' assistant for a very short period of time, but described kind of the power and the magnetism, I guess, that he has and how loyal his supporters are and the people that worked for him and with him. And so I suppose that when you then look at what Tracy has said, that some of those people may turn on him, some of those people may decide to, speak with federal agents in the case against him. That's a pretty big claim.
Yeah, a lot of civil cases against Diddy, isn't there? We should make note of that. But in this indictment, it's only one victim, and that victim is not named. Yeah. So we're talking here that a lot of the evidence in that indictment so far is actually from witnesses as opposed to victims.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to note that all of this came about because the raids themselves back in March were triggered by a lawsuit that was filed by his ex-girlfriend, by Cassie Ventura. Her bravery is to be commended in talking about this and bringing this up. And we know from that video that leaked to CNN of his 2016 assault of her in a Los Angeles hotel that she's obviously been through a lot. It must have taken a lot for her to speak out and to file her own lawsuit. And a lot of what she and her legal team allege in that lawsuit lines up almost word for word with things that we are now seeing, claims that are being made in that indictment, in that federal indictment.
It felt like Cassie was the person, and that was the moment, wasn't it, where accusers started being believed more broadly.
Absolutely. We have decades of rumour swirling about Diddy.
It's crazy in hindsight, isn't it?
It is. We even have interviews that he gave, to entertainment outlets back in, the late 90s, where he says, my parties are wild,
I'll be arrested.
I'll be arrested for my parties. And you look back at that and what he says has come true too.
Your parties are the hottest ticket around.
They won't even give me a permit for the parties, man. They don't want me to throw the parties no more. But we ain't gonna stop. We gonna keep on having fun, bringing people together from all walks of life. You're gonna hear about my parties. They're gonna be shutting them down. They're gonna probably be arresting me, doing all types of crazy things just because we want to have a good time.
Well, it seemed like tongue-in-cheek at the time, but now you look at it in the context of this indictment, could be more to it.
I also just think, it was kind of part of his hip-hop story, I guess, in a way. His name, Puff Daddy, came from rumours of a temper, that he would huff and puff and kind of be, pretty a bold character, I guess, and those rumours have followed him his entire career, and it really wasn't until Cassie filed that lawsuit that story began to unravel.
Yeah, and it's changed his life pretty rapidly, hasn't it, over the past few months? He's gone from 2 mega mansions in LA and Miami. Now, what's his life looking like now in a jail cell?
In a jail cell, exactly. In one of the most notorious and dangerous prisons in New York, in the Brooklyn Metropolitan Detention Center. It's quite an infamous place. It doesn't sound like he's having a great time.
Wouldn't have thought so. I mean, what do we know about that place?
Yeah, look, it's a really, it's a notorious prison in New York. It's quite a dangerous place. We know that he's currently in a dormitory-style room with lots of other prisoners. One of them is actually Sam Bankman-Fried, who's
Crypto.
He was convicted last year of fraud in a cryptocurrency exchange scheme. It's a bizarre place, I imagine, and the fact that he's there, I think, is quite significant, also because his legal team applied for bail not once but twice twice and was denied. And they were going to put up a bond of $50 million. You know, his daughter's and his mother's passport, the equity of one of his condos. You know, he wanted to do home detention with GPS trackers, and they denied his bail applications.
That's pretty much everything in the book that a defence team could offer.
$50 million is a lot of money.
Huge.
So,
yeah,
there's obviously real concerns there.
And concerns about potentially him being a flight risk.
Yeah, 100%.
And someone with a lot of inner circles and means of which to get around. So does that mean that if he's been proven guilty in court, could we potentially never see Diddy out of jail ever again?
Yeah, it's an important question. I think it will be interesting to see how this trial plays out. Tracy thinks that there may be further charges laid. We know from past cases that these things can take months, if not years, to kind of shake out. And so there's probably still a lot to come.
And probably a lot of people who have crossed paths with Sean Diddy Combs over the years concerned or sweating a bit. Tracy obviously mentioned, as we've spoken about here, that her suspicion is people in his inner circle might turn against him. What do we know about people now distancing themselves from Combs?
Yeah, I think if we go back 10, 15, even 20 years, Sean Combs's parties were these really, infamous things. They were super luxurious, lavish affairs. He was really famous, especially for his white parties, which he'd throw on Labor Day.
Every celebrity under the sun, we've been pictured at those over the years.
We've got video and photos of lots and lots of different celebrities at these parties, and a lot of those people have come out now and said that they're distancing themselves, obviously, from Combs, that they weren't aware of perhaps what was going on after those parties took place, because the allegations here are so heinous that people really want to be making sure that they're not attached to it in any way.
And that's an important point, isn't it? So ostensibly there have been these really lavish white parties every year, throws them in the Hamptons, all these A-listers. What's the distinction between that and what we're hearing in the indictment about where these alleged crimes took place?
Yeah, look, we don't have specific detail on exactly where these freak-offs, when and where they were happening. But from the indictment, we do know that, he would invite young women and male sex workers to participate in these kinds of sex parties that sometimes went on for days, were so brutal and severe that, people needed IV drips to rehydrate once they were done. There's allegations that people that participated in these parties, willingly or perhaps unwillingly, were left so battered and bruised afterwards that they couldn't go outside. They couldn't be seen because the damage that had been done was kind of so severe. It's really horrific stuff.
Sickening to read and hear, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we suspect that Diddy's defence here is going to be that they were all consenting adults?
Which is a real, worry. It's something that Tracy says that she suspects that's what the defence will say and what they might kind of fall back on, I suppose, that everybody that was a participant in this was a willing participant, that they knew what was going to happen and that they consented to that. Whether or not that's true, we'll have to see as the investigation unfolds.
It seems like if there's video evidence and video proof of this happening, the fact that it's consensual, the argument that it's consensual might be his only real defence here.
I think we are going to see a lot more information come out as this investigation and as this case unfolds. Tracy told us that she was surprised by the length of the indictment, that it was actually quite short compared to what she'd seen in her time in the CIA and as a special agent for the FBI, that there may be more charges laid, that the detail that will be kind of added to this is still ongoing. There's, in the indictment, we barely touch on arson charges. And, there's just so much there that I'm sure, more will come.
It'll play out over a long, long period of time still to come.
Absolutely.
Good way to end it. Sammi, thank you. As always, you can catch our story in our chat, quite a compelling chat with former FBI agent Tracy Walder on our YouTube channel as well as 9Now.